Hello, my friends. Michael Barbera here. This next episode was recorded with a live studio audience at Sandhills Community College in Pinehurst, North Carolina. On April 10th, 2018, Sandhills Community College hosted their annual Entrepreneurial Summit. Sandhills Community College invited Clicksuasion to host a panel about consumer behavior and decision making. A very big thank you to the 203 attendees, Teresa Reynolds, and all the partners, faculty, and staff that made this event possible. Enjoy.
Why is the shopping cart always in the top right of the screen?
How do companies predict my purchases?
Why do prices end in 9?
Why do fast food companies use red and yellow in their logos?
Why do restaurants always have one expensive menu item?
Researchers, marketers, and very curious people seek the answers for how we make decisions and how we choose products. Clicksuasion finds the secrets that companies use and shares them with you.
Why do I feel better when I bought the last remaining airline ticket?
How do I make choices based on colors and fonts?
Next, we're going to have a panel discussion, and it's very exciting. We've had plenty of panel discussions in the past, but this one is going to be dynamite, I can promise you. Michael Barbera is going to moderate it, and he will introduce our panelists.
So I'll introduce our panelists. The first panelist is Melissa Kennedy. Melissa, we know that your people are your passion. We know you have a TEDx talk titled The Return of the Entrepreneur, and we know that you've recently been named a 40 under 40 by the Triangle Business Journal. Melissa, what don't we know about you?
That one time when I was traveling in New Zealand, I actually hitchhiked on a semi-tractor trailer truck. True story. And I'm living to tell the story.
Let's give a warm welcome for Melissa. Cameron, we know you've conquered the Shark Tank with Our Riveter. We know you recently did your TEDx talk at TEDx Sandhills. And we know that Our Riveter is getting a new home in Southern Pines. Cameron, what don't we know about you?
Well, the only real job that I ever had before starting Our Riveter was folding towels at a gym and working construction with my dad in high school.
Let's give a welcome to Cameron. Stevie, we know that you are obsessed with the Myers-Briggs type indicator, so you're probably judging us right now. We know you use personality types to assess consumers and teams. What don't we know about you?
Well, I went to art school my whole life, and I painted and everything, but what I really wanted to do was be a singer, but I can't sing at all.
Let's give a warm welcome to Stevie. And our last panelist, Marielle Beasley, we know you have a passion for financial decision-making. We know that you're the co-director of the Common Sense Lab, and we know that you've worked with Dan Ariely under the Pain of Paying research. Marielle, what don't we know about you?
In 3rd grade, I won the hula hoop contest at the sock hop.
Let's give a warm welcome to Marielle. All right, each speaker will have 3 minutes. We're going to go right in order. The first up is Cameron.
Hey guys, so many familiar faces. So I recently read that 90% of the world's data was been collected in the last 2 years. So that's 2 years and 90% of the world's data. Just take that in for a second. So to say that we're living in a digital age is an understatement. And as a small business and a consumer of a lot of this technology, from phones to watches to the internet, I mean, how can it not be? So any email that you opened, any app that you downloaded, any time you used your GPS, any link that you click on or didn't click on, it all gets collected and stored, potentially reviewed, probably for both good and evil purposes. So it's easy to get wrapped up in the shiny data metrics, right? So those shiny objects that we gravitate towards as small business owners and consumers. And it's hard not to, but I think the most interesting thing is that the data is only part of the story. And what we need to remember is that great brands are built on emotional connections. Data doesn't build great brands, connections do. So when we're able to start and hold conversations that customers and our consumers and our friends want to be a part of, that's when we start to win as brands. When we start to be able to provide content that's thought-provoking and interesting and people want to connect with us, that's when we start to win. So the most powerful tool in your marketing kit and as brands is not an app, it's not our email list, it's none of that, it's you. It's your ability to self-actualize and think and use your creative brain. So I want to say, how many of you guys have checked your phones since I started talking? Be honest, don't lie. You were probably like, oh God, this girl's crazy, she forgot everything she was saying, so you might actually be paying attention to me. The average American gets 50 push notifications a day on their phone. And when's the last time you actually connected with one of those notifications? When's the last time that brought you connection or a thought-provoking conversation and didn't just bring you a boatload of stress? I want to remind you guys that great brands and businesses aren't collecting just customer lists and data. They're foraging and fostering and nurturing community. So with that being said, how are we as brands fostering community, rooting ourselves in this community? How are we empowering our customers? What conversation have you started today? Not just shared, not just liked, not just replied with some sort of GIF or animated picture, but how many conversations have you actually started? So our Riveter was founded on the notion that opportunity and innovation, when combined with determination, will create a positive impact. And that all started with a conversation. So I want you guys to remember, and the conversation that I want to start today is that you can change the world with a conversation.
Thank you, Cameron. Let's give a warm welcome to Stevie Pena.
Okay, so I want to give you guys a scenario. You have two people who are discussing an organizational change. They're sitting there talking about it. And this is pretty common. And if you don't have like the organizational picture, sometimes this is in your relationships as well. So you have one person who's like, hey, here's the data and numbers that are suggesting that we need to make the following changes. And it's going to be a better outcome for everyone involved. And the other person is listening and saying, it's great. I have the following people, and they're going to be affected by this change in this way. So we need to consider those people and how they are going to take this change. So the second person is looking at the first person as they're giving this really great information. They're saying, why is this person being so cold? Why aren't they caring about all the people who are going to implement this change? And then the first person listening to the one who cares is like, why are we clouding this decision with emotions? And we will do both. Like, we're going to listen to that and be like, well, if we're making a decision, yes, we need to care about the facts, or yes, we need to care about the people. And both make sense. But when we're talking about our reasons for making change, we're going to think one is better than the other. And this can come across as either cold or too caring. And those are just one of the various different personality aspects that can mess up communication between people and create conflict that doesn't need to be there. So what we like to do is go in and say, hey, look, you both want the same thing. However, let's figure out a way that we can tell the other person, hey, I care about the people. Let's do what's best for the people based on the following information. Or that is a great logical situation. Those are great arguments, and the people will be behind you because of this. So just learning how to communicate based on personality preferences, because we just have a way of preferring things to be done, and understanding that people might not have the same preferences, and that having that understanding and building that relationship really improves communication as well as relationships and organizational effectiveness. So that is what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Stevie. Let's give a warm welcome to Mariel Beasley.
Okay, so as mentioned, I am co-director of the Common Sense Lab, which is a research center at Duke University.
And we study financial decisions. So what influences somebody's decision to save, spend, borrow? And I'm not just sort of talking about telling people that they should save more, right? Most people know that they want to save more. Most people know that they want to have a sort of stable financial future. And so what we really look at is what is the opportunity that financial service providers have in order to redesign products and services to actually improve those outcomes, those financial outcomes for specifically low to moderate income households. So at the Common Sense Lab, our goal is to sort of over 3 years, we're in the start of our third year, to have a measurable impact on the financial lives of 1.8 million people living in the United States. So you might ask, that's a huge goal. How do you do that? And so what we do is we think about sort of that behavioral science piece. What actually influences people's behaviors? How can we create partnerships with financial institutions to take those findings, apply those to their services, and then actually measure the difference that that makes? Now, let me give you an example, because this can be a little bit hard to think about unless we get a little bit more specific. So one example is that we know that across the United States, a little over 40% do not have access to $500 if there was an emergency without selling or borrowing, like selling something or borrowing that money. So emergency savings is a huge crisis in the U.S., specifically among low to moderate income households. So what could a financial institution do in order to encourage more savings? Well, what most try to do is they just try to encourage their members to save. What we said is, well, one thing that we know is that people already have existing mental models for their finances. And one thing that we know is that the other problem that we have in the United States is debt, right? So we're not saving enough, and a lot of people also are borrowing a lot. So a lot of people are in debt and have no savings. So we worked with a financial institution that had a lot of folks who were coming in to get car loans and personal loans but had no savings. And we thought, okay, they're taking out a car loan, they've got a payment. Why don't we take advantage of the fact that they're probably already thinking about their payment in a round number? So if you ask somebody who has a car payment, how much is your car payment? They're going to say $250. You say, oh, exactly? $250 exactly? That's unusual. They're like, no, it's, $217. So people naturally are already rounding up. So what we did is we worked with the credit union to actually suggest, when people were taking out that loan, to say, why don't you just round up your payment and put the difference into a savings account? Seems simple. And the credit union was like, oh, yeah, actually, I think we can do that. And so sure enough, we piloted this at one branch, and what we found is that almost a third of all people who were offered this agreed to round up. So this is almost a third of all of their members who are taking out debt who are now also building emergency savings. Now, we thought, could we make this even better? Could we make this even stronger? And so for half of them, we actually told them how much they would have in savings by the end of their loan. So now it was no longer saying, do you want to round up? Now it's, do you want to have $1,030 in your account by the end of your loan? And now it jumped up to about 42% agreeing to keep that account and to go ahead and round up. So this is an example of the work that we've done. And so far, we already have had positive financial impact on over 500,000 people across the United States.
Thank you, Marielle. Let's give a warm welcome to Melissa Kennedy.
All right, how many people here love technology? Okay, I have about a third of the room. How many people here love human beings? I see the whole room raising their hands. I want to tell you a story about when technology innovation meets human connection. And it's actually a story about a very magical brand, Disney. So this is my own personal experience. I was speaking at a conference in Orlando, and while in Orlando, you must go to Disney. So decided to go to Disney World. They gave me the Magic Bands. Anybody here familiar with a Magic Band? So the Magic Band is this RFID tag plus storage that allows you to pay with your wrist. Oh, my. But the most important part about that is you get to do these fast passes, which means you can go to the front of the line. Who doesn't love going to the front of the line? I do, not going to lie to you. So I was a little skeptical. I was like, oh, this is cool, but I'm sure it's not going to work all the time. So I had a low expectation. I go to the animal kingdom, get ready to use my fast pass for the Everest ride. By the way, that's not for the faint of heart or soft of stomach, just so you know. So I get up there to scan my magic band, and oh no, the scanner didn't work. I had a little moment of panic of, oh, this is my fast pass. This is my front of the line. And the gentleman was like, do you have your phone to show that this is your pass? Yes, he let me through. But while I'm waiting to get in the car, I'm like, oh no, I got to go to customer service and get this band fixed because I have 2 more fast passes I want to use. So right on the ride, after the nausea settles at the end, I get a phone call on my cell phone. And it's Trish from Disney. Trish says, oh, we see that your magic band failed. I am so sorry. We have initiated your magic band. We're going to give you 2 more fast passes for the inconvenience. Is there anything else I can do to make your trip more magical? Literally, before I got out of the ride, they had anticipated the technology failure. They put a human connection between me and the technology so I wasn't inconvenienced. And so my experience was elevated with the technology plus the human connection. Fast forward to getting on the plane. This is the creepy part. Trish texts me, I hope you had a magical visit. Can't wait to see you soon at Disney again. So again, elevating the brand experience from failure to fix to loyalty relationship. I tell you this story because there are many entrepreneurs out here, whether you're digging technology or not. The technology matters, but not as much as the human connection. So as you sit there and put together your business plans, your customer experiences, think about this magical moment in the fact that you think about the entire customer experience from the first time they engage till perhaps if there's a problem to all the way to build loyalty over and over again through your relationships and human connection. So that's the magical moment you can share with your customers.
Thank you, Melissa. Now I really want to go to Disney World, so let's try to wrap this up a little faster. Okay, so first question. What are the most significant in your experiences, what are the most significant challenges that consumers face when making financial decisions?
So one of the things is actually our own psychology, right? So this is one of the things that we know about human behavior is that we're really actually not programmed for positive financial behavior. And essentially this means that there's a couple of things. One is that we have very limited self-control. This has been well studied, and actually positive financial behavior is sort of a consistent exercise in self-control, which is very difficult to do, and we're just not programmed for it. The second is that we are also programmed to be hyper-focused on the present and the here and now and sort of that instant gratification. And that made sense when you had to basically be thinking and focused on today and it was dangerous and you probably weren't going to survive if you were thinking about next week or a year from now. However, that does not work well when we now live beyond our working years. But we're still so focused, this sort of present bias, this sort of hyper-focus on the present. And this is one of the challenges with positive financial behavior is that it's this constant trade-off of giving up something that is sort of tangible and physical and in the here and now that sort of often is hedonic in many ways for something that is sort of intangible, distant, off in the future, potentially probabilistic if we're talking about sort of retirement savings. And this is actually just a completely unmotivating frame for people. And so it's sort of our own psychology that really sets us up to fail for positive financial behavior. And I'll let somebody else chime in.
I feel like you covered that really well.
What are some ways that you and your peers are changing how consumers make decisions?
I'll take this one. My passion is technology and human connection. We constantly talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and we forget that human beings connect emotionally and through relationships. So one thing we do in my company is to elevate the human experience that is assisted by technology. So again, not hyper-focused on the technology and the innovation itself, but really how can technology elevate the relationship and the human emotions that actually connect us to individuals and brands ongoing.
Yeah, so the other thing that we're also doing is we're trying to actually shift some of the responsibility from the individual. So which is kind of a little bit of I don't know, maybe it feels un-American to say, but right now there's a lot of so this is one of the kind of shifts in history, is that we've been putting more and more of the risk and responsibility on the individual, right? So when we think about retirement, it's gone from defined benefit to defined contributions. And so, and in this, basically what happens is that it's more and more on the individual, and it's up to the individual to be making the right decisions. But really from our perspective in the work that we do is we say, no, it's really up to the people who are designing the choice sets. Because what we know is that even small changes in an environment and a choice and the design of a choice set, so whether you're giving 15 options or 3 options, is going to change what people choose and decide to do, which means it's not actually on the individual, it's on the sort of who's responsible for designing that. And so we're really trying to shift a lot more actually away from trying to get the consumer to make better decisions and to get sort of financial institutions, tech companies to sort of actually design for better decision making.
Bless you.
How do your personal consumer decisions affect your research, your business, and your customers?
I mean, I think that anytime you start a business and you grow a business, it's going to affect you personally for the rest of your life. It's an entirely new perspective and a shift in the way that you experience things. So I think that knowing what it's like to be a business owner, the responsibilities that fall on businesses and companies and brands has really affected the way that I make decisions and I research people and companies. And, I think it's shown me that we as brands have a responsibility to people and communities, and it's really affected the way that I do life.
I want to add to that. Understanding yourself and your preferences really helps you identify like your successes and how you view things, and it helped me identify my own skill set and how it may or may not differ from others, and helping other people understand that their perspective is great and it really helps them, but it might differ for someone else, and really understanding how that interplays with each other and to help people be successful in the end.
And I'll just follow up that I find that empathy is the most powerful tool anyone has in entrepreneurship, running a business, a nonprofit, or interacting with human beings. And so I try to think anytime I interact with a customer, a prospect, or just any of you here, that I want to know how I would want to be treated, how I want to be interacted with, and I want to give you the same level of respect and empathy that I could with myself. So that's what I try to aim for. Sometimes I do it well, and sometimes I don't.
So the audience is full of future entrepreneurs, current entrepreneurs. Based upon your experiences, your research, what you know, your assumptions, what kind of marketing methods should we be using that we are not using?
What are we not? What are we using? Do you have a set?
You tell me.
I think the most important thing is our initial choice is always going to be defined by our own views, and which is great because we're going to reach out to the people that are like us because we like ourselves and we like everything that we do, but it may or may not represent the audience that you're trying to reach. So asking other people's perspective, or hey, I have this idea, and talking to the people who are in it or people different than you and saying, hey, how does this sound to you, really helps out in any decision that you take public or even to other people, because your perspective might not be the perspective that you want others to have of you. I think also testing, right? So there's a lot of sort of large marketing firms that are doing sort of A/B testing constantly to figure out what is the best response and things like that. But that's sort of a small piece of it. I think we could be doing a lot more, and I think we could be doing a lot better. That is sort of really rigorously not relying on our own intuitions about what works, but let's actually kind of put out multiple versions of things, see how people respond to them, collect actual data back to then direct and learn from and how to go forward. And then with that, that also means like expecting that not everything will work. And I think that in general is a really difficult concept for a lot of folks to grapple with, is that, and obviously this is a little different in startup culture and things like that, but that failure is actually okay because you're hopefully getting great learnings from it. And as long as you take that as learnings and not as just failure, then I think that should be a piece that is a little bit more embraced and a little bit more recognized.
For someone who has never done A/B testing, what are some, I guess, what's a good starting point for us?
Yeah. So I think sometimes A/B testing, the more academic kind of term for it would be a randomized control trial, and maybe multiple arms. But so the nice thing to remember about a randomized control trial is that there are two really important words in here. Randomized, which means that it's completely random who gets what. So it can't be that users get this and non-users get this, or women get this and men get this, because that's not random. So it would need to be totally random, so basically flipping a coin on who gets what. And the other piece is that controlled. So it means that you have one group that doesn't get what you think is going to work better. So because testing is all about comparisons, you need to sort of give two things and compare those two things against each other. And a really easy place to start is if you're doing sort of a marketing campaign, like an email marketing campaign, is test out different email headers. Some people get some people get a different one, and then just look at open rates. Did one actually get more people to open the email? And if it's really random on who got what emails, then you know that the difference in open rates is only because of the email heading and not because of some other characteristic of that population. So that's sort of an easy example of an A/B test. And then you know, oh, wow, okay, saying, don't miss out on this opportunity was much better than claim this opportunity now.
So my question is, half the back of this room is massage therapy students. And when looking at data and collecting that kind of data, do you have any recommendations for software or techniques? Because to us, that's very interesting. We totally grasp the idea of randomized controlled studies. However, I don't know what tools to use. The idea of setting up that kind of data, and especially with a provision such as massage therapy, which can be so subjective. Do you have any recommendations for tools to use in this business?
You can use MailChimp, and you can have set up two different email, just the email example, two different emails with your list. You got to collect a list first, so that's the hard part. Then the random, that sounds very academic. Honestly, just take the first half of the list and the second half of the list and have two different emails. It's free. You could do it. And then the reports, they're pretty graphs. I can read them. Don't need a PhD to do that, which is nice. You can also do it like Facebook. I know Facebook's having a little controversy these days. But you can look at there too, targeting a certain percentage of a certain demographic, same percentage of a different demographic. You can use that. Massage therapy would be a great location because you can also do it localized based on zip code, which would work for your business. Twitter has the same thing, although I would think Facebook's probably a better use for massage therapy. Those are two specific platforms. Again, Facebook itself has a really nice ad profile, and MailChimp is free, and you can literally cut and paste, super easy, paint by number.
Also, for websites, if you are looking at how people interact with your website, you want to have kind of two different versions. You can use sort of Optimizely is one program that allows you to actually randomly show different sort of pages within a website. And there's several different tools out there like that, but that would be some good places to start. Also, if you're doing any text message communication, right? Text messages is also a wonderful place to experiment. And then what you'd want to sort of, if you have there's several kind of text message platforms also that you can figure out if you need two-way text messaging or something like that. But they'll track whether or not, response rates and things like that. And then you'd likely also want to be tracking other data that might not be through a software platform. And maybe it's even just in Excel, and you're and basically it's after people have an experience with you, you're asking them some, 3 short follow-up questions and looking at satisfaction scores. And are people more satisfied when you do X versus Y? Are people more satisfied if you give them hot tea, or are they more satisfied if you give them cold water, right? So that's a really easy question to ask. And essentially you just randomly, half the patients, you would give some of them cold water, the other half hot water, and then you ask all of them to complete the satisfaction survey and see which group, on average, scores higher satisfaction.
And I would add one more thing just around what we're not doing in marketing, is to let yourself off the hook. Too many times you have consultants telling you as entrepreneurs, you have to be on Facebook, you have to be on Twitter, you need to be doing email, you need to be going to events, you need to do this, this, and that. You actually have a finite amount of time and energy. So I highly recommend to let yourself off the hook so you're not burning yourself out so you can run your business. And make some choices and then just make those choices amazing. So if you want to be a website, email kind of marketer kind of person, just do it sensationally. Don't do it half-assed just because you got to be able to tweet and do Instagram and. It's not going to help your business, and it's just going to stress you out. So I just want to give you some advice to make some choices and rock those choices.
So building on both what Marielle and Melissa are saying, what are some ways that we can use our data to identify who our customer is by age, socioeconomic status, where they reside, et cetera?
So those tools and the people that do those tools and they do those surveys, those are endless. So, I mean, you get lost in that. So I think more importantly is what are you trying to accomplish as a business? And it all depends on where you are, your scale, what you're trying to accomplish. But I would say be careful with diving into the data and the metrics and getting overwhelmed by that, because I can tell you we've spent money on endless surveys and demographics and reports and then what? So if you shell out $5,000 for a demographics report, what are you going to do with it then? So I would say it's so much more of a question of what do you want the data for, and strategically what are you going to do with it rather than how you're going to get it, because, there's Google for that, but Google can't fill in your strategy.
And I'm a big fan of rapid prototyping and testing. Mm-hmm. So I came from sort of the startup weekend world where you put together what they call a low-fi, low-fidelity prototype, and you go to places like this and just say, hey, you want to try my cream? I got a new cream. Or you've got a new app. Hey, as you're walking to get some snack later, just randomly ask people to try stuff and then kind of get that demographic information, just a few things so you know, oh, female, 40, she likes to hitchhike on semis. Yes, that's my audience. Let me go find more of that. So I'm really into the rapid prototyping to get some real feedback, and then you can use the tools to scale that data and feedback to make those decisions. But I echo your point. You got to have a strategy first.
And also I think to that point, it is understanding that what you're working on is not going to be a solution for everyone, right? So I think that's a really important thing to remember, and that as you try to make it work for more and more people, you are less likely to make it work for anyone, right? So, as an example, we're working on a project right now with the city of Durham, not related to financial decisions exactly. It's on parking. So how do we get fewer people who work downtown to park, right? So we want them to take buses in. We want them to walk. We want them to bike. Parking is a problem in downtown Durham if you guys have been there. And so, we've gone through a lot about who is our target. Like, who do we actually need to move? And naturally, everybody's like, okay, well, what about the parent that has, 2 kids and they have to drop them off at daycare? Maybe we need to add something about, like, how you'll get, like, free rides to daycare for your kids. And it's like, or we just don't worry about them. Like, they need to park downtown because they have to drive their kids. And so, like, let's not actually design a solution for them because that's not who we're trying to move. We only need to move 5% of the population. Parents with kids that they're dropping off at daycare are in that 95%. Let's not worry about them. So thinking really strategically about, like, who is my demographic, and let me nail it for them, right? Let me nail it for the, 30-something-year-old who lives alone and lives within 2 miles of downtown and who owns a bicycle. Okay, let's nail it for them, because let me tell you, those guys are still driving, as one of them. Those people are still driving.
We're going to let some more of the audience harass the panelists. So we have a question in the back. Tell us your name and your question.
Hi, my name's Mia, and we talked a lot about attracting consumers today. What we didn't touch on was retaining employees. So my question really has 2 parts. And the first is, these same techniques that we're using to build brand loyalty and to attract consumers, are those the same things we're using to attract employees? And then the second part is, how can we better understand our employees? They want to feel that they're getting value in their paycheck and their experience, but we want to feel like we're not wasting payroll. So
that's my favorite topic. A lot of the employee maintenance really is your leadership and people feeling valued, because You can offer somebody a lot of money, but if they don't feel valued and that their work means something, no paycheck is going to keep them for long. And it's finding out really how your people work, what motivates them individually, and using that. And that is more valuable than how much time they get off or how much money you make. It's knowing your people individually, first making sure they have the qualifications to accept the job. But people have different work styles. They have different learning styles. They have different speaking styles. And really individualizing, understanding the validity in their preferences or how they want to do business, and capitalizing on your current resources. You have people that work for you. They work for you for a reason. What is their reason? How are you going to keep that? And just really asking questions, getting to know them, reaching out, and using that. And sometimes if you have an employee who started out doing very well, and then after a couple months they're starting to slack off, we could be like, well, man, I just had a bad hire. No, maybe there's something going on, or they have a need that's just not being met. It could be my chair is uncomfortable, or the person next to me didn't say hi to me in the morning. But these things we won't see, but we will see the productivity. So finding out what has been working, and then what has changed in the environment, how we interact with one another. And it's just that personal touch and learning each other that really improves productivity and commitment to your organization.
Is that your way of telling us that we gave you an uncomfortable chair?
I was going to say, never underestimate the power of a comfortable chair at work. I would say that one of the things that you don't hear, especially in our industry, which is manufacturing, is the word transparency. But growing a business from 2 women in an attic to over 50 people now, I think one of the key pillars that we stand on is transparency. So when you are able to share your dreams and make your dreams their dreams and hear their dreams, a lot like you were saying, and just have that conversation and be transparent about your needs, and they can be transparent about theirs, you're unstoppable.
I just want you to think of Aretha Franklin, RESPCT. Respect is probably the number one thing you can do for your employees, respecting their talents, their styles, but also inviting them in to co-create on the dreams that you have a shared vision and a shared experience. So if you're ever in doubt about your employee experience, just think about Aretha.
Yeah, to that point, right, they say that people don't leave jobs, people leave managers. And so there's a huge role and responsibility of your management team. And if people keep leaving under a certain manager, that's definitely something to think about. Is like, how do you help that manager learn how to grow and be a better manager? But, you know, sort of our lab a couple of years ago did a study on how to motivate productivity for employees. And this was actually at a factory where it was like you could actually just measure. It was a call center, so you could actually measure output, right? Because for most jobs, especially in the sort of thought economy, it's very difficult to measure productivity. But this was a place where you actually could measure productivity. So, and what we did is we did bonuses. We looked at how they did bonuses. And so some people received a cash bonus. Some people received a voucher for pizza as a bonus, and some people received just a text message compliment from the boss. And it was like if you met your quota or something like that. And so for what happened on the day that you could get, and it was only one day a week you could get this bonus. And on the day that you could get that bonus, productivity went up kind of across the board, especially for the cash. Right? People were like, yes, cash. But what was really interesting is that for the rest of the week, in that cash bonus, productivity went below normal. So on the days where they didn't get the cash bonus, now all of a sudden productivity was much less. And so the productivity across the week there was no gain by having the bonus. The big difference was for the text message from a boss, where productivity went up, and then it slowly declined back down. So that over the course of the week, that productivity was much higher and much more positive, and obviously much cheaper for the company. And then the pizza voucher, the coupon for a pizza, basically performed somewhere between the two, right? So it wasn't quite cash, but it was a little bit social, but not totally social. So this idea again of it's not always
the money. It's a lot of times it's about this sense of appreciation. It's feeling like your boss recognizes what you're putting into it, and they recognize your effort, and that goes really a long way for employee retention, satisfaction, and productivity.
Kind of hiding with the crowd. I'm going to blend in like where's Waldo, so you have to find me throughout the day. We do have a question in the front of the room.
Thanks. I'm going to creep in here. Okay, Cameron, I'm going to put you on the spot with this one. So I'm glad we're recording this for Michael's podcast. I religiously listen to podcasts, and I heard you on the Spotify Masters podcast recently, and it was a really great interview. But it prompted this question, so I'm glad you're here that I can ask it in person. So I started my business 4 years ago. At the time, I also went to SCAD. I had just finished school, worked in corporate for 3 years, started my business, and I established this really great loyal customer base. Then I married into the military. So, you get this. So I was just wondering, fortunately, when I first got married, I thought my business was doomed because I had to move and it was just so hectic. But fortunately, through tools and technology, I've been able to maintain that core audience that I've developed, even though I now live far away from them. But I was just wondering if you had any tips for how to give your audience a sense of continuity, or at least to simulate it when your life exists on change and just flux always.
Yeah, well, thanks for the question, and congratulations on your business. That's incredible, especially living the military lifestyle. I know how hard it can be. Entrepreneurship's not for the faint of heart. Military spousehood is not for the faint of heart. So when you combine them, sometimes it can be a recipe for disaster. But my advice and sort of my personal philosophy is don't. Be honest. I think I'm big on transparency, like the last conversation that we just had. But I would say, be persistent and be consistent, but be honest. And if your life is down in a hole, maybe somebody else is down in a hole and they need that. So I think that people are looking to you for that honesty, and they're looking to you for that perspective. And so when you give that and you share that and you show them that, you can still create a business and you can still sustain a business all while doing these things at the same time, I think that it's an inspiration to a lot of people. And so I would say give it all. Don't sugarcoat it. Mm-hmm.
We'll take one more question. I wasn't prepared to walk back down here. Thanks.
You're working off that pizza voucher, Michael.
Hello, my name is Wendy. I have a question about success. How do you define success as an entrepreneur just starting out? Because everybody defines success differently. I know when I started my business, which is a blog, it was to help people. It was not to monetize and make a living. It was for helping others. So how do each of you define success for beginning entrepreneurs?
So kind of as you kind of further develop and kind of what it is you're offering, I actually would start first with rewarding yourself and counting success as the things you can control, right? So thinking about your inputs, which means if you're doing a blog, success for you is how many blogs you actually wrote this week, or how many blogs you wrote this, and set a goal and make sure that it's a goal that you can measure, that's, that is, you can reach, right? All of that, the SMART goals. But that it should be something that you can actually measure, right? It's really difficult to measure whether or not your blog is helping people. And so start first with what you can measure and something that you can control. And then, once you've sort of gotten that and you've reached that goal, then I would look at, okay, now my next goal is I want to increase my readership by X%. So think about what are the sort of milestones along your journey to your greater outcome that you want, which is to help people. So how are you going to know that this is happening? The first thing is that you've got to be writing. So that's going to be your first goal, is making sure that I'm getting enough pieces out frequently enough. The second piece is I need people to be reading it. So now I'm going to focus on making sure that I've got readership. Then after that, I want people to be commenting or sharing, because this is going to be a proxy that it's resonating with them. And so then you're going to be tracking your shares. So I would think about what can you measure along that process and start with what you can control.
Let's give a big thank you to our panelists.
Thanks for listening to Clicksuasion. Subscribe to the podcast, read our research, and get in touch with us at clicksuasion.com. You can also find us on Twitter with the handle @Clicksuasion.